This is Unit 16, Introduction. We're going to start off by watching a few Learn Zillion videos. This video is, this video is going to be video 6. I just have a small part of it pulled up. I totally recommend you watch the entire video, which is what you're supposed to have done by now. But I just want to highlight some key parts before we start introduction. Okay.
You know how to multiply whole numbers, like in the problem 3 times 4 equals 12. You can say this two other ways also. You could say you have 3 groups of 4, or you could do 4 plus 4 plus 4, which is 12, and that last example is repeated addition. When you multiply a fraction by a whole number, you are doing repeated addition with the fraction. Let's take a look at what that means. We want to multiply a fourth times 5, and we can use repeated addition to do that. Since the denominators stay the same for each fraction, we're just repeating it or multiplying it, we can add the numerators together. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 5/4. You can see here that our denominator stays the same, but we add up the numerators. And we added it up 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because that's what we're multiplying our fraction by. So our numerator is larger than our denominator. So we can divide to find our mixed number, which would be 1 and a fourth.
Okay, so that's video 6. Like I said, I recommend you watch the whole video. It's really important that you know what multiplication is. It is groups of, okay? So you have 5 groups of 1/4, okay? We're going to watch a little bit of video 7. I have it at the right part, okay?
Here we have the fraction 1/4. This is what it would look like as a visual model. If we want to multiply a fourth times 5, we can multiply this visual model 5 times. Here we have a fourth times 5. So we've multiplied this visual model 5 times. 1, 2.
Okay, so this is the same as the video we just watched. However, this gives you the visual model. So in 3rd grade, you learned how to say what this fraction is called. It is called 1/4. However, you're going to do 5 different groups of that.
2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 1/4 pieces. So our numerator is going to be 5. You can see that our denominator is still 4 because each fraction model is split up into 4 equal pieces. So our denominator stays the same. It stays 4. That's an improper fraction. Remember, improper fractions can be shown as mixed numbers. So if we were to combine the individual 1/4 pieces together, our visual model would look like this. Now we have 1 whole.
Okay, so just to add to that, they took this fourth and this fourth and this fourth and this, and they just combined it into one piece. And this actually clearly shows you your mixed number. You can see it's 1 whole and 1/4.
Whole and a fourth left over. And we would write that like this. 1 whole with a fourth left over.
Okay, and finally, I want to show you a little bit of video 9. Video 9 was optional, but it does have this standard with a number line, which if you are looking at Unit 16 Introduction, it is number 1 on here, so I do feel like we should be watching this.
Now let's use a number line to solve 3 times 2/5. In earlier grades, you learned to skip count. For example, you can skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We're going to skip count on the number line by 2/5. every 2/5 tick mark is really 1/5 plus 1/5. So here we go. 2/5, 4/5, 6/5. Notice that we skip counted 3 times because we're multiplying by 3. We're on the 6/5 point, and that's the solution to 3 times 2/5. 3 times 2/5 can be written and solved in different ways. For example, 3 times 2/5 can be written as 2/5 plus 2/5 plus 2/5, which equals 6/5. On the number line, each blue arrow represents the distance 1/5 plus 1/5, or 2/5. We can solve 3 times 2/5.
Okay, so this is how I would recommend setting up the number line. You need to look from 0 to 1. They have it partitioned out by fifths, okay? And you can see that it goes from 1 to 2 here, so these are more than a whole, okay? And what they have on the number line is, since they've partitioned it out into fifths, they said, okay, this is 2/5, okay? Now I've got to add 2/5, and then I've got to add 2/5, okay? That's why they're not going just over 1, because over 1 would just be 1/5, so they're going over twice, okay?
By writing each 2/5 as 1/5 plus 1/5. And again, you get 6/5. Now let's solve a word problem using a number.
Okay, I'm going to stop there, and we are going to start introduction. Okay, so if we look at number 1, it says draw on the number line to show 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. The number line starts at 0. I'm going to go ahead and extend it to 1 whole, which would be 6, 6. Okay, let's say 1 whole or 6, 6. All right. So you can clearly see that they have the number line partitioned out already into 6. This is 1/6. This is 1/6. This is 1/6. Okay. So how we would show repeated addition on a number line. Okay. We are going to jump by increments of 1/6. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. There's my first one. Okay, and then I'm gonna add 1/6 to that. There's another one. I'm gonna do that 4 times. That would be 4 groups of 1/6. Okay. And then it says complete this addition equation. Okay. And I know the standard is multiplying a fraction by a whole number, but we know that multiplication is the same thing as repeated addition. So from our previous few units, you have learned that these are the unit fractions, and when you add fractions, first of all, you need to make sure your denominator is the same, and it is, and our denominator is not going to change, so it will stay out of 6. Okay, and you do add the numerators, so we've got 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, gives you a total of 4/6. Okay, the next part of number 1 says write a multiplication equation that means the same thing as your addition equation. Okay, so it's asking you to take this and turn it into a multiplication equation. You really need to know the definition of multiplication. And it is groups of equal parts. They have to be the same in each group, okay? So if you look here, there's a group, there's a group, there's a group, there's a group. How many whole groups do we have? We have 4 whole groups, okay? And we multiply that by how many are in each group each time? 1/6, 1/6, okay? So this is the equation that we just did. And we're going to write our product of 4/6 right there. Okay? Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says shade the model to show 3 times 3/4. Okay? One of the videos we watched in particular showed you how to multiply with models. So, excuse me. There's 3 different groups here, okay? Do you see the 3 different groups, all right? So let's just shade 3/4 on each model, okay? So there's 4 total. 3 are shaded there, okay? So I've already done one group. Let's do another group. 3/4 need to be shaded in this group. Okay. And here's our third group, and 3/4 need to be shaded in this group. Okay. And then it says write a multiplication equation, okay, just like we did here, that shows the product, okay? So we have to figure out what multiplication equation that we did. We basically did 3 groups times how much is in one group, 3/4. Okay? And it says that we need to show the product. And hopefully you know that the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Okay? So what would our denominator be? It would stay fourths because everything is fourths. Okay? And now we need to count how many fourths we actually have, okay? Okay, so we're going to count 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4. Now we have 9/4, okay? And when you look at 9/4, you know that 9/4 is an improper fraction. Just like the video said and we learned in the previous unit, you have to convert that to a mixed number by dividing, okay? Which brings us to our second part. Which 2 whole numbers is the answer? Well, first we need to convert it to a mixed number by dividing. How many times will 4 go into 9 without going over? 2 whole times, okay? 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract, you have 1 left over. That remainder becomes your numerator, okay? And everything is in fourths, so your denominator stays the same. So 2 and 1/4 would be the final product for number 2. However, when you look at this part, it says which 2 whole numbers is 2 and 1/4 between. So you've got to think about on a number line, okay? What 2 whole numbers is that between, okay? Let's see here. Trying to figure out this. I can do a small one right here. It's going to be a bit jumbled, okay? So 0. And I want you to think about where 2 and 1/4 would fall. Okay, notice that the way I have this number line, there are no fractions in this right now. We could partition it into fractions. Right now I'm just showing whole numbers, okay? So think about where 2 and 1/4 would fall. Would it fall in this area? Probably not, because we have 2 wholes. So here is the 2 wholes. In 1/4, we've got to figure out where that would be. That would be on the right side of the 2 or on the left side of the 2. It would be on the right side of the 2, and 2 and 1/4 would probably be about right there. Therefore, the 2 whole numbers it's between are 2 and 3. All right, so we are going to skip number 3. We're going to move on to number 4. It says last month, Danielle and Robbie sold candy to raise money for a school field trip. Let's see, I'm sorry, lost my place. Danielle has sold 4 times as much, and I'm going to write 4 times above it, 4 times as much candy as Robbie, okay? Let me read that statement again. Danielle sold 4 times as much candy as Robbie, so I'm already wondering who sold more. I think it's telling me that Daniela sold more than Robbie. As a matter of fact, she sold 4 times more. Robbie sold 1/5 of a case of candy. How many cases of candy did Danielle sell? Write and solve an addition equation that models this situation. Okay, so this time we're looking for an addition equation and we need to solve for it. All right. So how I would set this up is looking at what I know so far. Okay, this really is not a whole lot of room to be able to set it up, but I know that I am talking about Danielle. I'm going to just kind of give myself some room here for number 4. So Danielle and Robbie. What do I know? I know that Robbie sold 1/5 of case of candy. And I know that Danielle sold more. As a matter of fact, Danielle sold 4 times more than Robbie did. Okay? So let's look at an addition equation. All right, so let's see. Robbie sold 1/5 of a case, and she sold 4 times that. So we need to write an addition equation with 1/5 being the repeated 4 times. Okay. So here is how much Robbie sold. He sold 1/5, and Danielle sold 4 times that amount. So here's a group, here's a group, here's a group, and here's a group. Okay, so that will be 4 groups, 4 times that amount. Okay, and we need to solve. We learned, I told you in our previous unit, when we add fractions, our denominators need to be the same, and they do not change. Therefore, our denominator would stay 5. And we add the numerators. 1, 4, 4/5. That is how much candy that Danielle sold. Now it says write and solve a multiplication equation. Okay, so we wrote the repeated addition equation. Let's look at how many groups we have. We have 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 whole groups, 4 times. Okay, and how much is in each group? We have 1/5. Which gives us a total of 4/5. Okay. One thing I do want to discuss with you guys, I want you to, number 1, understand what multiplication is, that it's equal groups. But I also want to point something out to you. 4 wholes can be written as a fraction. Okay, I'm going to show you the fraction that it's going to be written as. 4 wholes is the same thing as 4/1. Okay, because if you divided 1 divided by 4, you would get 4. So it's the same concept. Okay, and another way that you could do this is multiply across. And you're going to have to be super careful when you multiply across. You multiply the denominators. 1 times 5 is 5. And then you multiply the numerators. 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, so that is one way to figure it out. But I really want you to understand that when you're multiplying a whole number times a fraction, it is equal groups, okay? And I want you to think of it like a number line and a model, okay? This would be a quick and easy way to figure it out, but you have to understand the concept behind this. Instead of just being able to do this, okay? All right, so let's look at number 3. I see 3 and 5 for the end. They are actually multi-step, so we're going to have to break it into parts before we can do it. They also don't really give us a whole lot of room. It says Felicia's dog eats twice each day. So I'm going to twice each day, okay? She feeds him a 1/3 cup of dry food at each meal. Okay, that's each meal twice a day. Okay, and then it says, the question says, how much dry food does Felicia's dog eat in 1 week? Well, let's turn 1 week into days because we're talking about days here. So we know that 1 week is equivalent to 7 days. All right. The first thing I'm going to have to be able to do to figure out how much dog food he eats in 7 days is I'm going to figure out how much dog food he actually eats in 1 day, because he does not eat 1/3 cup in 1 day, because he actually eats for breakfast and dinner, so it's going to be twice. So I'm going to have to do a couple different steps here. So first, I'm going to figure out how much food he eats in 1 day. All right. Well, I know he eats 2 meals a day, so I'm going to be doing 2 times 1/3 cup. Okay. All right. So I want you to think about this as repeated addition, 1/3 plus 1/3. That would be 2 groups of 1/3. Or you could do this other strategy that I just showed you, where the whole number has a denominator of 1 and you multiply across. Okay, 1 times 3, 3, and 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so what does 2/3 represent? It represents how much dog food he eats in 1 day. Okay, but we are looking at answering the question that says how much does he eat in 7 days. Okay, so we're going to have to do another multiplication equation. So for 7 days, each day he eats 2/3 cup of hard food. Okay, I want you to think about what that would look like. That would look like 7 groups of 2/3. So you could do a repeated addition problem, 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3, all the way 7 times. Or we can do the quick and easy way here. 1 times 3 is 3. And 7 times 2 is 14. Okay. However, you cannot leave your answer in an improper form. So we are going to have to convert 14/3 into a mixed number. You would convert that by dividing. 3 goes into 14 how many times without going over? 4 whole times. And 4 times 3 is 12, and subtract, and you have a remainder of 2. Your remainder becomes your numerator, and your denominator stays 3 like it has the whole time. So the answer is 4 2/3. Okay, as you can tell, there's a lot of steps here. You have to be super careful, and again, you cannot leave your answer in an improper fraction. All right, so let's look at number 5. Fran makes 4 bows to decorate a gift basket. Each bow uses 7/8 of a yard of ribbon. The ribbon comes in spools of 3 yards, 5 yards, or 10 yards. Write and solve an equation. Okay, so we're going to write and solve an equation that shows how much ribbon Fran needs to make the bows. Okay, so first of all, I need to figure out how much ribbon she actually needs. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out how much ribbon she actually needs, the part about the ribbon coming in different spools of yards, that part is irrelevant at this moment. Okay, we may need to use it for a second part in the question, but right now we just need to figure out how much ribbon she is actually going to need. Okay, so she has 7/8 of a yard for, well, it says write and solve an equation, so we could do repeated addition equation, or we could do multiplication equation. Let's do the multiplication equation. All right, so she needs 4 bows, which would be 4 groups. Okay, and each one, and when I say each, I'm going to multiply that. Each bow requires 7/8 of a yard of ribbon. Okay, I really want you to make sure that you understand that 7/8 could be this could be written as 7/8 plus 7/8 plus 7/8 plus 7/8, 4 different groups of that. we are going to put this as a whole number. So you put it as a fraction of 1, multiply across 8 and 4 times 8. Okay, so again, you cannot leave that as your answer. We must convert it to a mixed number, okay, by dividing 28 divided by 8. And how many times will 8 go into 28 without going over? It's going to be 3 whole times. It's going to be our whole number. And 3 times 8 is 24. You have 4 left over. And you cannot divide anymore, so therefore 4 becomes your numerator. And 8. So the answer is 3 and 4/8, which hopefully you can look at 3 and 4/8 and also know that it's equivalent to 3 and 1/2. Okay? Now there's a second part to it, which might be the part that this other information will come into play. Okay? So the ribbon comes in spools of 3 yards, 5 yards, and 10 yards. Okay? So she's going to need all this ribbon, and she doesn't want too much ribbon, but she wants to have enough ribbon. Okay? So what is the smallest spool of ribbon Fran can purchase to make the 4 bows? Okay, well, she needs 3.5 yards of ribbon. If she purchases the 3 yards, she's not going to have enough, is she? Because she still has to come up with a 1/2 yard. All right. If she purchases the 10 yards of ribbon, wow, that's going to be like way too much ribbon. Okay. I'm thinking the 5 yards of ribbon is going to be just the right amount. She's going to have enough, and it's okay to have a little extra, but she doesn't want too much extra. So she's going to need 5 yards of ribbon. Okay, that's the best option if she needs 3.5. Okay, we're going to flip it over and look at the vocabulary journal. All right, so looking at your vocabulary, I think they are all vocabulary words that you should be familiar with. Looking at it, you should know a denominator, a factor, fraction, multiplication, numerator, a product, repeated addition, and whole number. All right. I think most of those are already in your math notebook where we took the definitions. Okay, vocabulary activity. All right, so it says multiplication combines equal groups. It's really important that you know that. And can be represented by repeated addition. So multiplying 2 times 3 excuse me, represents combining 2 groups of 3, or 3 plus 3. That would be the repeated addition part, and this would be the equal groups. Okay? Use this information to write a word problem. You're going to write a word problem for 2 times 3/4. Then use repeated addition to solve the problem. Okay? So maybe looking back over at the introduction, something that could be a fairly simple one would be looking at like number 4 in the introduction. So you can use any type of nouns you want. I would create a word problem maybe with 2 people, and one person has 3/4 of something and the other person has 2 times as much as this person, and then solve. So you need to write the word problem and then you need to solve using repeated addition. All right. And then let's look at the journal, which is always a bit more complex. It says, complete the multiplication problems and study the factors. Okay, let's talk about factors. It's been a while since we've discussed factors. Factors are 2 things that when are multiplied together give you a product. Okay, so it says study the factors and products, and you should know that products are the answer to a multiplication problem in each column. Okay, So column 1, 8 times 6. What is 8 times 6? Hopefully you know that 8 times 6 is 48. 27 times 10. 27 times 10. 70. Okay. And then you've got 9 times 12. Okay. Give you a minute to complete that. 180. Okay. Okay, let's look at column 2. Okay, so I want you to see these factors in the products. Okay. And column 2 says 5 times 1/10. That would be 1/10 in 5 groups of 1/10. Okay, how would we solve that? Well, you could do the way that Ms. Langman taught you earlier. Okay, so you could do multiplying that over a whole number and multiply across. So 10 is your denominator. 5/10. Okay. I also see that's equivalent to 1/2. All right. So 1, 3, 12. I see that I can actually do that mentally in my head. 12 divided by 3 is actually going to give me a whole number there. Let's look at this. 30, and I can actually change this to a whole number as well. Okay, I want you to look at these relationships, okay, between the factors and the products. All right, well, the first thing I kind of want you to know is that this is equivalent to 1/2. And we need to change this improper fraction to a mixed number by dividing, but hopefully you can divide that mentally just to see that it's 4 wholes. Okay. And hopefully you can divide this mentally just to see that it's 6 wholes. Okay. So it's really asking you to look at these products, because typically when you multiply numbers, what happens is that your product is bigger. Okay. Well, let's look here at these products and see, is that really true when you multiply by a fraction? Okay. And it says, how does multiplying by a whole number by a fraction between 0 and 1 affect the product? Look at these products right here. These products. But whoa, look at these products, okay? I definitely hope I gave you some hints right there. I want you to complete this part. And then I want you to complete partner practice. As you can tell, partner practice is extremely wordy. It's very challenging. You need to make sure that you take your time and that you pay super close attention to what it's saying and how it's set up. Once you have finished this partner practice, I want you to put your answers into the partner practice Google form. That way it'll tell you if you got them right or wrong before you do the other activities.